What's up, guys? Welcome back to Project Potter. Welcome back to Project Parker. And guys, we finally made it to the big one. We are reviewing Spider-Man No Way Home. Because this movie is so new, guys, just so you know, there's going to be the first bit is going to be spoiler-free review. I'm going to kind of give it some time there, guys. Then we're going to jump into heavy spoilers. So my name is Kyle, your host. Thanks for checking out the channel. If you guys have not been here before, welcome. We are just under 1,000 subscribers right now. So if you guys do like the content, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing. Full disclosure, guys, I do not expect, or I am not confident that I will not be crying during this review because, guys, I have been, I saw the movie last night. It's a busy movie. There's a lot to process. All morning, guys, I have been like ugly crying, like Tobey in Spider-Man. This movie is just, I can't believe it exists. I can't believe this is a thing that I saw. It's an emotional movie. It's a heavy movie. It's a powerful movie. I have a whole lot of thoughts on it, guys. But if you haven't seen the show before, welcome. This is sort of the finale until we have Spider-Verse 2 next year, and then maybe Multiverse of Madness if that ties into Spidey. I don't know if that's going to be just a Doctor Strange movie. I guess we'll find out. Either way, for now, this is kind of the conclusion of our story for now for the Spider-Man review. Go check out all the other reviews, guys. I've been reviewing these every single night leading up to this premiere. So yeah, guys, we do my favorite scenes, some of my issues or worst scenes, the score out of 10, and then the rankings. And so, guys, once again, we're going to kick it off here with kind of an overall sense of the movie. This is our spoiler-free portion, guys. I haven't done this for my other reviews, but because this movie is so new and it's so popular, and I know people are going to be, trying to avoid spoilers and stuff and want to get reviews without getting the movie spoiled or any big things leaked. Off the bat, guys, spoiler-free. This is a great movie. People have been asking, can I go see this if I haven't seen the other ones? Or is it okay if I start with this one? This is very much a movie that doesn't really stand on its own. It is it relies heavily on the past movies. And I don't want to get into which ones, but I do think that you can see this movie and enjoy this movie. It's a great Marvel movie without having seen the other Spider-Man movies. I just think that a lot of this movie is fan service, and it's amazing that they put the plot together in a way that makes sense. And there's so many moments that longtime fans and people who have seen all the other movies are going to be like, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they put that in there. If you haven't seen the other movies, but you remotely like Spider-Man, which is, I'm sure, is most people, I would recommend watching the other ones before going to see this. But I don't know, if you're not really into Marvel, if you're not really into Spider-Man, I think you can still see it and have a good time. I just think this movie does less of a job of standing on its own and more of completing this trilogy, this Homecoming trilogy that we've had in the MCU, and also tying into other things that I don't want to get into in the spoiler-free version. So this movie is also hilarious, guys. There's a lot of really funny things. Again, it relies on the Homecoming cast a lot. So, if you've seen the first ones, and if you like Tom Holland, if you like Ned, if you like Zendaya as MJ and Flash in there, that's great. You're going to have a great time with it. If you're not familiar with those characters, it might fall a little flat for you. But again, it's the third movie. You don't really start a movie trilogy with a third one. You don't start by watching Spider-Man 3. You start by watching 1. So if I would recommend this to someone, I would say it's probably mainly for Spider-Man fans, but it's not. It's just a good movie overall. I just don't know if people who haven't seen the other films are going to get out of it what most people are getting out of it, which is just this payoff for all this build up. So really, really great film, guys. Looks fantastic. Very, very funny. I was surprised at how funny it was. And visually, it's awesome. There's some really cool effects in there. It's a blockbuster movie in every sense of the word. But yeah, those are pretty much my my spoiler-free thoughts, guys. So again, I'm going to give you guys a second here. Count to 3. I don't know. And okay, they fucking did it, guys. Are you kidding me? They actually pulled it off. I can't believe, guys, but I can't believe what I watched last night. we actually got a live action Spider-Verse. And this is the one time I wish the internet didn't exist, because it was like 99% confirmed, but Andrew Garfield was like, I'm not in this movie, I'm not in this movie, I'm not in this movie. And we're like, we know you're in that movie. They released the trailer, and then they messed up because they had the wizard getting punched in the air, but no one was there, and it looked very obviously like it was a 3-on-3 battle. So I was 99% sure we were getting all 3 Spider-Man in this movie, guys. But let me tell you, last night was an experience. Being in the theater, first of all, the theater I went to, guys, our theater, I went with a buddy of mine last night. We laughed, we cried, we cheered, we gasped. Every 5 minutes, dude, there was like a round of applause or someone like screaming yes. And it's like, I felt like we were at like a play. It wasn't a movie. It was an experience. It was just mind-bogglingly good. I mean, they brought everyone back, guys. Every single person. I have a couple qualms with this movie, just a couple small ones. I'll get into that in just a bit, guys, but we're in favorite scenes here. When Doc Ock shows up, and we've seen the Hello Peter, and I'm like, give it to me. Give me the Hello Peter, dude. And it's just awesome because it's like this, like almost like Jurassic Park, where you hear like the banging first, and then we see that fucking claw or that arm come up, and it's like, oh my God. And then he shows up. Alfred Molina looks so good in this movie, and he just says, hello, Peter. And he's like, what? And I think Tom says, like, do I know you? And it's like, oh, it's just so good because he's like, oh, your new suit won't save you. And it's like, oh man, he thinks he's fighting Tobey's Peter. It's so cool. And then obviously, like, there's an amazing scene where he pins Peter up against the thing, and he's like, oh, nanotech. He's like, it's pretty impressive. And I was like, oh, I'm surprised that Doc Ock knew about nanotech. And then he rips off the chest plate from Peter and then like absorbs it. And you see this awesome shot, dude, of him getting like the Stark technology into his arms. So cool. But then it turns out that Peter is like, oh, I think Doc Ock says, no, you listen to me now. Which was a callback to Spider-Man 2. And then like Peter can still control it. So now Peter is actually controlling the arms, and we get a really funny scene where he's already like, oh, okay. And he like loosens himself up, and then he goes over to the top of the bridge, and it's like he's now in control of Doc Ock's arms, which is so funny, dude, because it's like, it's just amazing. And a great twist where I was like, oh, I did not expect that to happen, because he takes off Peter's mask and he's like, you're not Peter. And he's like, I am so confused right now. They brought back Max Dillon as Electro, but he's cool-ass Jamie Foxx. And I was like, what? Max Dillon, you brought everyone else back pretty much exactly as they were, including Green Goblin, who flies in. And so, guys, when he flies in and he laughs and you see him in the suit, I was like, oh, my God, dude. We get a scene where Willem Dafoe is having a conversation with the mask, just like he was in Spider-Man 2, where he's got the mask on like a dumpster or whatever, and it looks so good. The suit looks so fresh. Eventually, guys, they decided to go with another design for Goblin, where he smashes the mask and he's like, no more. And I like that it's symbolic, where he's like trying to be like, no, you can't control me anymore. But then they have him, or Norman put like a hoodie on, basically. It's just a little bit different, but I was like, that suit is so good, and you already brought it back in the movie. To just get a quick glimpse of it, I'm like, dude, like, just go all out. Just give me the suit every time. I wanted to see more of the Green Goblin suit. But they bring Max Dillon back, guys, and he's super cool, Jamie Foxx, and he's got like a fresh cut, and it just looks like Jamie Foxx, like normal day Jamie Foxx. And they even bring it up in the movie where they're like, what happened to you? I thought you got like a glow up, dude. They're like, you were so nerdy before. And I was like, what did happen to you? Because that doesn't make sense, because everyone else just came back exactly as they were. And I don't know if it's really explained. He's just kind of like, oh, I just got pulled in this reality and now I'm different. And I'm like, I don't love that. That was one of the only real issues I had with this movie, where I was like, man, it was so cool to see Flint Marko. And they even got the guy's face. There was like rumors that it was being John Cena or whatever. And then it was just Flint Marko. It was, I'll put his name in here, guys. I can't think of it right now, but it was the same actor's face at the end. And he's saying most of the movie, but at the end, I was going to say spoilers, but we're already in spoilers. When he gets cured at the end by Peter, the sand dissipates or whatever, and it's his face. And I was like, oh, awesome. I'm so glad that they brought him back. It's those little things that make it authentic, which is why I was mad about the Electro thing, where he looks cooler. But I'm like, this doesn't feel like the same character, because Max Dillon was so awkward and goofy. And then you just made him cool as shit. And I'm like, what? And Jamie Foxx is like, oh, I like me in this universe. And I'm like, but this isn't you though. This is like a different you. It's weird because the whole point of this movie is that they're bringing characters in who are authentically themselves from their universe into Tom's world or Peter's world. Or Peter One's world. But I was like, why did you make Max Dillon cool? It doesn't make any sense. Just, you already committed to everyone else being original. Just keep that. And I like the Blue Electro too. So I liked how Max was all goofy and weird. So for him to be cool, I felt like a different character. And I was like, I don't like that. But guys, we got Kirk Connors back as a lizard. That was awesome. And I forgot that the lizard was in this movie. So when he showed up, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Obviously, we got Doctor Strange in this movie, guys. And there was rumors about Doctor Strange being Mephisto and like, oh, this isn't Doctor Strange and this wouldn't be what Doctor Strange does. And it turns out that Doctor Strange was just kind of dealing with Peter, who was just kind of being obnoxious to him. I mean, guys, it's just, we get Goblin, Doc Ock, the Lizard, Electro, and I mean, obviously there's more guys, but for now, I'm gonna kind of go through the movie and touch on like as we go. But again, this is the one obviously I've seen the least. I've only seen it once, so I'm trying to just go off memory. I have seen a bunch of clips from like TikTok and stuff now. I'm so thankful that I can go back on the internet again. I didn't open like Twitter, Reddit, or TikTok for like 4 days because I was like, I don't want to see anything. I'm going to see a spoiler. I got this amazing shirt, guys, which we'll get to in just a bit. But Doctor Strange. So let me first start off, guys. This movie, what I love about this movie starts off and it's fucking chaos. And it's so, you're immediately like, oh shit, like this is going down. And it's so well shot and made. And it picks up immediately where Spider-Man Far From Home ended, where the post-credit scene where Quentin Beck says Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And guys, they have the Marvel intro playing, and it's like, I love when movies do just the audio first, and like the movie starts, and it's just like, they're like replaying the end of Far From Home, where it's like, execute all drones, and he's like, Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And the Marvel logo comes up, and I'm like, oh my God, let's go, dude. And we see Peter swing it, and then there's like press and paparazzi everywhere, and I'm just like, oh my God, dude. And it's like, from what we saw from the trailer, Public Enemy #1, it's like Peter's face is all throughout New York, and he's swinging, and they're like, wait. And it's a very real shot where it goes down to the camera, the crowd, and some girl is like, are you Peter Parker's girlfriend? And they're looking at MJ. And she's like, what? And then Peter like comes down, and then Peter's like trying to get her and swing away, but there's a huge crowd around them. So they're actually like kind of in danger. And some girl like wants to throw hands where she's like, she like bumps into Spider-Man, and she's like, Spider-Man assaulted me, Spider-Man assaulted me. And I'm like, oh my God, it's such a great play how like people will take celebrities and like try and exploit them to get like money or fame or whatever. And I was like, nah, dude, this girl did not. I'm like, this girl needs to go away. So he goes away. But then he's like swinging back home, and he goes in there, guys, and it's just nuts everywhere. And they go under the train, and they're like, everyone's trying to interview Peter Parker and find out from Peter Parker. And we got helicopters chasing him, dude. And then Happy and May are at home. And so Peter zips home there. He like closes all the blinds, and then he gets in there. And it's so sad because Aunt May and Happy like are breaking up. And I was like, what? No, dude. And like Aunt May is kind of cold here, and Happy is like, I thought this was a thing. Or she's like, oh, it was a fling. That's what flings are. And I was like, no, Aunt May, you're lucky to have Happy. Okay, don't you dump Happy. Okay, Happy is great. Happy is the best of us. So I was like, this is what Aunt May rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. I was like, you're being kind of uppity, for lack of a better word. And so this was kind of a really sad dynamic. I was like mad, but then the news is on, and it's like Spider-Man's identity revealed, and then it like shows their building, and I think Happy goes, "Is that here?" And then Peter's like, and he like pulls the curtain open, and the helicopter's there, and it's just like, you're just in it, dude. Like you're just like, this whole thing is crazy. We see like Peter and MJ go to school, and it's like there's reporters everywhere, and there's like extra security, and it's really, really hectic and crazy, and they're like holding hands, and there's like slow-mos, and it's like, man, it's beautiful cinematography. They get to the school, and then Peter's like, I'll come back for you or whatever. I forget what he says, but it's like really dramatic, and it's like their whole lives are changed upside down. We get a really funny scene. I think it's with Hannibal Buress, which they got back for this movie, which was great, and they got J.B. Smoove back, and we were like, did J.B. Smoove replace Hannibal Buress and Far From Home. No, they got them both back, and we got Guilfoyle again, of course, as the teacher or whatever. And so there's like a quick scene with them, and I wish they were in it a little bit more, but I think this is their only scene where it's three of them, and they're like, your Highness or whatever, and they're like, look, you can run through the halls or swing. He's like, it's up to you, whatever you want to do. It was just really funny, and they're like, we have this mural here. And he's like, you put that together. And he's like, what? No. He's like, no, you did all of that. And he's like, we tried to stop you, but you kept going. And it's really funny. And Peter's just like, he doesn't want any of this. He doesn't want the fame, obviously. And so his life is turned upside down. And it's crazy. And they kind of get used to it. And a couple weeks go by, but then they're trying to get into college and they're getting their letters. And there's a great montage of Aunt May and Peter. And they're like, oh, that was a backup school. No worries. And they get another letter and it's rejected and it's rejected. And then the final one is MIT. And Ned, MJ, and Peter are all applying to MIT, and we assume Peter is like a super smart student, so it's not grade-wise, I'm sure, but they have a big moment where they open their letters, and they're like, rejected, 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 and it says, I think it's Peter who reads it out loud, where he's like, due to recent, or maybe it's Ned, where he's like, due to recent events, we have to decline your offer or whatever. And so Peter's whole mission is to like go and track down the lady who's in charge of admissions, who's on her way to the airport, which is where we get the Doc Ock scene. So I kind of went out of order there, guys, but this is crazy because it's like Peter realizes that because of him, MJ and Ned's futures are now affected. And it's like now they're not getting to the schools that they are probably overqualified for because they know Peter Parker. And then we get a funny scene where Flash comes in and he's like, what up? He's like, going to MIT. Or he's like, no sleep till Boston. And then he's like, you guys didn't get in? And they're like, no, because we actually know Peter Parker. This movie is like way funnier than I thought it was going to be, but it's also like emotionally heavy and it has some punches to your gut. So yeah, it comes Fast and Furious, guys. Salute me familia. And we get Doc Ock and then Green Goblin right away. And then Doctor Strange whooshes Peter away. And Doctor Strange puts Peter in this box and he's like, oh, guess what? We have this super cool like wristband now where you just shoot it at someone and it's going to put them in this like Doctor Strange has like this magical dungeon. They call it like the Wizard Dungeon. And Doc Ock is in there. He's like, let me out of here. And there's like no way to get out of there. Doctor Strange takes Peter out of his cage and he gives it to him. And he's like, look, all you got to do, he's like, you got to shoot them with this. And, you know, he has a scene with Ned and Peter and MJ where he says, you know, ever since, oh, sorry, guys. So Peter freaks out and he goes to Doctor Strange and he's like, hey, I need you to make a spell. He's like, everyone you know will forget. And he's like, oh, well, he's like, well, Aunt May should know. And he's like, okay. He's like, everyone except your aunt will forget. And then he's like, well, also I want Ned to know. And he's like, everyone but your aunt and Ned will know. And he's like, well, MJ, I need MJ to know. And he's like, Peter, you need to stop messing with the spell. He's like, you're changing the spell every time. He's like, it's getting too complicated. And then Peter just keeps butting in. And then it causes Doctor Strange to like lose like focus, I guess. And so the spell, we get this awesome shot where the rings go out and it's like, it looks like right out of Loki, dude. It's like purple all around and it's like just the floor on them. And then Doctor Strange has to like push it down. And then he ends up putting it like an orb or like a box. And he's like, Peter, that could have gotten really out of hand. He's like, you don't even know what that could have done if I didn't contain that spell. He's like, you need to be more careful. Peter's like, okay, sorry, thank you. But he's like, you should be good now or whatever. And Peter goes to leave. And then it turns out that all these, that's when we get Doc Ock and Green Goblin stuff. And Doctor Strange is like, hey, and again, guys, this is kind of out of order, but sorry, I'm going off memory here. Doctor Strange is like, hey, you need to Scooby-Doo this shit. And then they're like, MJ is like, you know, I got some magic words myself. She's like, and it starts with please. And he's like, please, Scooby-Doo this shit. It's great. And then basically, yeah, he sets him up on that, like ghost hunting mission, basically. But Doc Ock is kind of like the audience's person who tells everyone what's going on, where he's like, there's a great scene we saw in the trailer, guys, which I thought was going to be fake, or like, I thought they were kind of trying to throw us off, but he's like, what's your real name? And he's like, Dr. Otto Octavius. And they start laughing. And it's a great like pause for comedic effect. And my theater was laughing too. And he's like, no, seriously, what's your name? He's like, Dr. Otto Octavius. And they start laughing. And it's just funny because there's so many little lines here, guys, that I'm not going to remember that I could not believe were so good. There's a scene where Ned is like, oh, guys, so they go try to get all the villains and stuff. And there's a great scene with Electro where he's kicking Peter's ass, but then Sandman shows up and he's like, Peter. And he's like, I'm not your Peter. And he's like, what do you mean you're not my Peter? And I'm like, oh, this is so good, dude. And Sandman kind of stops Electro and he shoots both of them into the fields, the wizard dungeon, I should say. There's a great scene too where Peter like shoots at the sand and like it goes through him, and so it just sends like sand back to the prison cell. It's awesome. But Kurt Connors is also like in there immediately. I don't even remember how he got in there, but basically Peter's rounding everyone up, and then we find out that Doctor Strange is like, okay, well, you know, their fate is to die by Spider-Man. So he's like, I'm going to push this button. He's got like a box, which I didn't love the prop. It looked really cheap. Like they're carrying on this big box the whole movie. I thought it was weird. And he's like, well, I got to send them back and they need to die, because he's like, you don't know, you're going to mess with the multiverse in ways you don't understand if we help them. Because Peter is like, no, I need to, like, we can cure them, like we can help them, and so they don't have to go back to their homes and die, because there's like a very, very real conversation where they're all kind of in the dungeon together, and they're talking about like Green Goblin or Norman Osborn being dead and all that stuff, and they're like, I don't want to go back to my world. He's like, I was a loser back there, and he's like, I'm going to die, or like, I didn't choose this power and all this stuff, and I'm like, very, very real, and it makes you feel for the villains a little bit. Also, guys, I want to point out a scene that I think I was the first one in the theater clapping, because I didn't even wait for the full line. We get Norman in the, so there's a quick scene. We get the Green Goblin, right? He comes in, and then like Peter's whooshed away by Doctor Strange, and we get a scene where Willem Dafoe smashes the Goblin mask, and so he's kind of trying to like rid himself of the Goblin, which is the last time we see the mask, the suit, which is very unfortunate. And so he shows up to Feast, which is really cool that we got Feast in the game, in the movie, from the Spider-Man PS4 game. And he shows up, and Aunt May is like, hey, this man needs help. He's lost mentally. And it's like, yeah, dude, it's sad, because it's like he's like an old man. Like, it's just like Willem Dafoe, basically, like with dementia. And he's like, there's another guy that takes over, and he's like, I need help. I don't know what to do. And Aunt May is like, we have to help this guy. And Peter feels the same way. But he's like, oh, he's too dangerous or whatever, because he like almost turns into the Goblin, and Peter webs him or whatever. They shoot him into the prison. And then, guys, there's an amazing scene where, like I said, I think I was the first one clapping, because he said they were talking about something, and then he's like, oh, I'm kind of a scientist or whatever. And then we cut to Norman, and he goes, I'm somewhat of a scientist myself. And he said somewhat, and I was just like I was like so excited that they put that movie in that line, and I was like, let's go, dude. How are you going to put that line in there? Like, just amazing. I don't want to talk for hours about this movie, guys, because I'm sure I could, but Doc Ock is like, there's no way that Green Goblin is Norman, because Norman was a dead man. And this is the one part where I was like, this is strange, because the way that these characters came into Peter's world was a little convenient for me, where I was like, okay, well, Doc was drowning in the river. And one of the characters brings it up. I think it would be Kurt Connors or someone. But like, he's brought in here and he's alive, obviously. So like the point at which they're brought in is strange, where it's like, obviously Doc Ock, before he drowned in the river, was pulled in, but then Norman Osborn, who died before Doc, which is why Doc knew about it, he's pulled back in, but he's alive. So it's like, how did that work? So, but it's, we're literally messing with multiverse and dimensions and all that shit. So it's like, it's not like everyone was picked like 4 p.m. on this day, like everyone was picked. It's like somehow different timeline. I think it, like, the fact that the rings went everywhere, I think it was just kind of like randomized everything, where it's like, you got pulled from here and you got pulled from here and you got pulled from here. It's just really awesome. And I think it's crazy to think about like what it did to the multiverse, and it's just all awesome stuff, guys. But Peter is like, I'm going to cure all of you guys. We get a scene where they go to Happy's house, which is funny, because he's like looking on the robot cam, and this is just a really fun cast of characters, and there's a lot of star power obviously here between Alfred Molina and Jamie Foxx and Tom Holland and Sandman and Kurt Connors. And this is fun because Peter is like, yo, I'm going to fix you guys so that when you go back to your own time, you don't have to die. You can just like go on, live your life. And in my head, I'm thinking, that's great, but that's going to fuck up the multiverse hard, dude. Like, you don't know about the ramifications, because it's like Doctor Strange is like, their fate is to die. He's like, I need to press this button and send them all back. I didn't talk about too, guys, that we get a great scene where Doctor Strange is like, you know what, I'm sorry, Peter, but this is how it has to be. And he's about to press the button. Spider-Man flips the box and pulls it, and then Peter starts running with it. And then we get this just fucking incredible sequence, guys, where we saw it from the trailers a little bit, where Peter goes to swing away, and Doctor Strange just opens a portal and like has him swing into himself or whatever. And he's like, dude, he like lassos him. And he's like, you're not going anywhere. And then he pulls him in, and then he hits him, so his astral body comes out of his body. And you're like, okay, well, Doctor Strange is so powerful that Peter has no chance of getting away with Spock's. You know what I mean? Like, you can't outrun Doctor Strange. He's so powerful. And we saw the astral body thing, and I'm like, oh, Peter versus Doctor Strange is going to be sick. And then Doctor Strange is like, all right, let me just take this box. And then Peter's body, first of all, Peter is like, what? Whoa. And he's like, am I dead? He's like, no, I just removed your astral body. And then Peter's Spider-Man body, or his physical body, is like moving the box. He's like trying to take it, and he's like, hey, give it to me. He's like, how are you doing that? He's like, this should be impossible. And I was like, oh, this doesn't make sense that Peter would have the ability to move his physical body in his astral form when he's just like a kid, basically. I know he's super smart, but I was like, it's so funny and it's so great and awesome and such a great twist where I was like, I don't care that this doesn't make sense. This is amazing. And so that happens, and guys, there's just like this incredible sequence where Peter starts fly. Peter like actually literally swims back to his body, which is super funny. And then he takes the box and he starts swinging away. And Doctor Strange is like, oh yeah, dude. He's like, I'm going to bend time and reality. He's like, I'm going to put you in the mirror world. And we get some of the trippiest scenes since Doctor Strange, dude, where he has the trains and he like rolls a train over each other and tries to like squish Peter, and he gets out of the way. But then he like sends him through like that portal we saw almost like into the Spider-Verse, guys, where he's going like upside down and he's falling through. And the visuals are just incredibly stunning. Like, this isn't a movie, dude. The theater enhances this experience so much because it's mind-blowing visuals. Like, I could not believe how cool this scene was. I was just like, this is amazing, dude. This is the shit. Like, there's so many like things folding on themselves. It's like looking at one of those like kaleidoscopes as a kid where you're just like, whoa, except like way cooler. And it's just insane, guys. And then kind of skipping ahead in the movie here, guys, they end up trapping Doctor Strange in the mirror world, which is awesome because Ned, I don't remember exactly what happens, but Peter kind of tricks Doctor Strange. Oh, he takes his takes his magic ring and he traps Doctor Strange in there. I was like, wow, dude, Peter just got the one up on Doctor Strange. And then he goes and sees Ned and MJ. They're like, what happened? He's like, oh my God, I just fought Doctor Strange. He's like, it was crazy. Everything was going everywhere. He's like, I took his ring too. And Ned's like, let me see that. And he's like, whoa. And then like Ned goes to the movie, like using the ring. It's so cool. Eventually, guys, we get to the scene. There's a couple of big scenes in this movie that I don't think I'll ever forget. And the first one, guys, is just, I mean, what a moment where they're sitting there and Peter's off doing his thing. I think he's hunting down the other people or whatever. But Ned and MJ are there and they're like, oh, we have to find Peter. We have to find Peter. And so they're like, all right. And then Ned's like, oh, I'll just open a portal and get him. And so he's like, okay, find Peter Parker. And he opens the portal and we get an alleyway and there's someone in a Spider-Man costume. And everyone's like, bro, are we doing what we think I'm doing? And when he's like, oh, we got to find Peter Parker, everyone knew this is the moment, right? So he opens it up and they're like, Peter. And he's like looking around and they're like, Peter Parker. And he starts running towards them. And like the theater dude was starting to like get so excited. And all the reaction videos I'm seeing are people like, oh my God. And he jumps through, guys. And it's Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man. He's in the suit from Amazing Spider-Man 2. He's standing there, and then like it's like Ned's aunt or grandma or whatever like throws something at him, and he's like, hey, he's like, I'm a nice guy. Then he takes off his mask, and the place just went nuts, dude. And it's like, holy shit, they fucking did it. They brought Andrew Garfield in here, and we get this hilarious sequence, dude, where MJ throws a piece of bread at him, and he's like, why'd you do that? And she's like, I want to see if he has a tingle. He's like, I have the tingle. He's like, just not for bread. And it's so funny, dude. And Andrew Garfield's character is written so great. He like really let his hair grow out in this one, so he looked a little bit different than Amazing Spider-Man 2. And it's been like 6 years since that film, or 7 years since that film, almost 8 really. So I get it, but I was like, oh, this was a little off-putting to me, where I was like, he looks just a little different. Like, but then he acted the same, and his lines were so good, and he was so funny. Where he's trying to like prove that he's Spider-Man, and they're like, prove it. And he's just like, he stands there and he just puts his hands up and he just does a little hop and he's just hanging onto the ceiling with just his hands. And it's so funny. And they're like, that's not enough. And he's like, what? He's like, this is more than enough. She's like, no. She's like, crawl around the ceiling. And he's like, are you kidding me? And she's like, crawl around the ceiling. And he's like, oh. And he like puts his mask in his mouth and then he gets on the ceiling and starts walking around. And then Ned's grandmother is like, she says something in another language, and then Ned is like, oh, she's just wondering if you can like get the cobweb over there since you're up there already. And he's like, are you serious? And he goes over and he's like, oh, and he like cleans the cobweb up. And it's so funny, dude. And they're like, you know what, whatever. And then they're like, try again, Ned. And he's like, okay, find Peter Parker. And I'm like, oh, we're fucking doing this right now. And I thought they were going to like bring in Garfield and he's going to work with them for a little bit. And then Peter would run to Garfield and they would get this cool moment. And then like Tobey would be their last reveal, guys. But he opens the portal and who steps through but fucking Tobey Maguire, guys. And I was like, they did it. They fucking did it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, guys, I came here for Tobey, and I was like, and Andrew, really, because I love Andrew. Probably my favorite Spider-Man, honestly. But Tobey was like the guy that started it all, and he's like, man, everyone was looking for Tobey, and he comes through and he's wearing like normal clothes, and so Ned's like, oh, it's just a random guy, like he's getting frustrated at the magic, and the portal closes, and he's like, hey, and like the place just went fucking bananas, and the reactions are just people like literally weeping. Like I couldn't believe it, guys. It's just like what a moment in cinematic history. And so Tobey comes through and he's like just so lovable, dude, like so lovable. It's like that scene, I think it's in Spider-Man 3 where he's like,
they love me.
Then let's hear it for your one.
Where he stops through and he's like, hey, I just came through here. Oh, it's closed now. And then they're like, there's a joke eventually where I forget how it happens, but there's like a scene where in that same scene, that same sequence where Andrew and Tobey, they both flip on the ceiling and they both whip at each other. And then he like gets him on the arm and they're like shooting webs and stuff. And he's like, interesting. And then like the grandmother's like, clean up the webs that you made. And like, oh, sorry, I'm so sorry, of course. And you know, they're like, oh, are you Peter Parker? And they're like, oh, did that come out of your wrist? And he's like, yeah. They get more to that later. But there's a great scene later on, guys, where Tobey isn't in the suit. And I was like, interesting that they don't have him in the suit yet. But they're like, why aren't you wearing your suit? And he's like, well, that would defeat the whole purpose of like the anonymous superhero thing. And it's like, oh, yeah, dude. In his universe, he wasn't like Garfield. And I love that they played on that, where they're like, Andrew Garfield just takes his mask off. He does it a million times in Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man, he doesn't really care, at least to an extent that people know he's Spider-Man. In the Raimi verse, the Raimi trilogy, dude, like Peter could not be unmasked. Like until the only time Doc Ock knew, and then MJ at the end of 2, but like he always kept it a secret. Like no one knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and so for him to do, like he wouldn't be wearing a suit because he'd just be chilling at home or whatever. But I love that he shows he's got the suit on underneath at the end, because someone, I forget who says it, but someone's like, are you going to change or are you just going to continue fighting crime as like a young youth pastor or something? It's just so funny, dude. And I'm like, God, this movie, man. There's so many scenes, guys. Like I said, guys, the scene at the end where, and I've seen it a few times on TikTok now, I just cannot believe it exists. It's so good. They're fighting the Statue of Liberty at the end, guys. They're going against Electro, who, and again, I'm not going to recap the whole movie, so like go watch the movie, of course. But it's the shocker. The villains turn on everybody, and like they have to go stop Electro and everyone at the end. And I thought this was interesting because Electro, I thought, was easily the most powerful villain in Amazing Spider-Man 2, because he's electricity, and the only way that Andrew could stop him was with Gwen like overcharging him at this perfect timing where they caught him off guard. And Peter was so easily outmatched, or so obviously outmatched in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, where he's getting like tossed around. And he's like, I hate this song. It's a great scene, but like he needed Gwen's help just to take down Electro. And now he's like even more powerful because he steals the arc reactor. And when we got the arc reactor, I was like, are you going to give me a Tony Stark cameo? Because I was like, in this movie, guys, I was like, anyone could show up now. Like when you bring in the other 2 Spider-Men from the non-Marvel, non-MCU Spider-Man universes, anything is on the table now. I'm like, I could see anyone in this movie, dude, including Tony Stark. And so that didn't happen, so I was a little disappointed. But he hits the arc reactor, makes him super powerful. I was like, Electro was already so powerful. Now he's just like unstoppable. But they're trying to take him down. They're trying to take down Goblin. And there's just a great scene where they have like a quick moment. I think the Sandman is going around, so there's like crazy all around them. So they like need a breather. So they go in there. First of all, guys, I mean, they fucking all land together. And it's just like, oh my God, dude. And then there's like a scene when they're swinging, they're like webbing into each other to like pull each other and go so they're not running into each other. It's so it's mind-boggling, dude. I can't believe it. But the scene, my favorite scene, I think, or one of my favorite scenes, as we kind of get towards the end of the movie here, guys, is the three Spider-Men together. They literally recreate the point thing, which is awesome. But I love that they're like, I don't know how to work as a team. And there's a great back and forth. There's a great part where Tom says, look, I don't want to brag, but he's like, I was part of a team. He's like, I was part of the Avengers. And then Tobey goes, the Avengers, that's great. What is that? And I was like, oh my God, it's so good, dude. And then Andrew was like, oh, is that a band? He's like, are you in a band? And I'm like, oh my God, it's so amazing, dude, that they have no, like, the Avengers didn't exist in either of the universes. And so I was like, wow, the Avengers dominate this MCU timeline. And then two other Spider-Men are like, what is the Avengers? And I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. It's so fucking cool that like they said that, and that's in there. There's a whole sequence, guys, where they question Tobey on his web, and they're like, so how do you do that? And it's just so good because Tobey, they're all sitting there in their suits but not their masks, which was a great move because you couldn't see them emote obviously in the mask. So I'm really glad that they made that choice. And Tobey's like, I mean, it's like breathing, right? You don't think to breathe, you just do it. He's like, so I just shoot with the web. Tobey's like, are you teasing me? And Tom's like, no. He's like, we just can't do that. So he's like, we just are curious. And he's like, does it come out of anywhere else? And he's like, no, just the wrists. And it's just really, really amazing and adorable. And there's a part where they're like, oh, what's the weirdest? Like, and this is totally what three Spider-Man people would do. They would totally talk. They would like shoot the shit and be like, they say, who's the craziest villain you fought? And Tobey goes, I fought an alien black goo creature from space once. And I was like, oh my God, dude. And then I was like, are we going to get Venom in this movie? And I was like, are we going to get the black suit, or is someone going to show up as Venom? Again, I was like, anything can happen in this movie. And then they're like, whoa, that's cool. And then Tom goes, oh yeah, I fought an alien on Earth and in space actually. And they're like, what? And then Andrew goes, oh, I'm so lame. He's like, I fought a Russian dude in like a rhinoceros machine. It's so funny, dude. And they're like, you're not lame. Tobey's like, you're not lame, dude. And he goes, you're amazing. And then he's like, oh, no. He's like, I'm not saying I'm lame. He's like, I'm saying like the villains I thought of and lame. And he's like, no. He's like, Tobey, he's like, it's a self-doubt thing we got to work on. But he's like, you are amazing. And I was like, oh my God, dude, it's so cool that you're telling the Amazing Spider-Man that he's amazing. It's such genius writing, dude. It's so good. And just seeing the three of them interact it's just incredible because we hear about Doc Ock too, and it's like, wow, dude, my whole childhood just into one. And it's like all of the questions, like when you're dreaming up scenarios where you're like, oh, what if Andrew ran into Tom, ran into Tobey? What would they talk about? And it's like, this is what they would do. And there's like just absolute genius writing. And the last scene I want to touch on, guys, and there are more scenes. There's so many just incredible. Well, sorry, there's two more scenes I really want to get into in this review. And I'm sure when I'm done recording this, I'm going to be like, oh my God, there's X, Y, Z that I did talk about that I want to talk about. But one scene that I really want to mention, guys, at the end, obviously, well, no, we'll hit this one first because I think I'm in the clear now, but we'll see how this goes. Emotion wise, guys. And this is the scene that was in the trailer, I think the last trailer, and I'm really kind of mad that they put that in the trailer because this would have been an unbelievable moment. It was still amazing, no pun intended. But the fact that I've seen this in the trailer, I was like, oh, this is what's going to happen. And so when the moment happened, you're nervous because you're like, especially with this movie, you're like, my expectations are kind of all over the place. Like, I think this is going to happen, but I'm not sure. Like, I thought all three Spider-Man were going to be in here, and I'm so glad they are. But I'm like, now I don't know what's going to happen. They're probably going to toy with our expectations a little bit. And so MJ falls, right? And it's a slow-mo MJ falling. And everyone's like, the whole theater gasped, right? And Tom goes after her, and, he's really emotional. And he goes after her, and then the Goblin glider hits him off. So he's like, not even, like, there's no chance that he can reach her in time. And again, the audience gasps again, and you're sitting there and your heart's in your throat. And then it cuts down, and it cuts to Andrew, dude. And everyone's like, go, Andrew, go. Everyone's like, get the fuck in there, dude. And he jumps, and he catches her, and it's just like, oh my God, dude, I'm out of words because the place just erupted. Like it was like when I was watching the Super Bowl, dude, where people were like standing up and clapping and cheering and just everyone was so happy. And it was like the loudest applause that I've ever heard in a movie theater. And people were just like, yes, Andrew. And he catches MJ and he looks down and he goes, are you okay? And she goes, yeah. Are you? And the acting here, guys. Andrew Garfield breaks down when he and looks at MJ, and it's like, man, and guys, this is where I fucking cried. I cried hard, and I think I'm okay for this review, but off screen when I'm seeing reactions, guys, when I see his face emoting, he absolutely knocks it out of the park in this scene where, especially just having watched Amazing Spider-Man 2 a couple nights ago, guys, and being so genuinely sad, being actually bummed out, having to record. And I told you guys, like, I was so heartbroken because Andrew and Emma's chemistry, Peter and Gwen's chemistry, was so incredible and amazing. And I think the best thing ever put in Spider-Man cinema for sure. But in terms of the MCU, I think some of the, well, I guess this is part of the MCU now, but superhero movies in general, guys, I think are some of the best chemistry ever put on screen. So her death was especially heartbreaking, especially the way it was so beautifully shot. I talked about that, guys. Go watch my Amazing Spider-Man review. I love that movie. For him to see Tom's MJ falling, and for him to be so scared and be like, oh my God, I know exactly how that feels. I'm about to see it again happen to him, and to see Tom get knocked away. But then to see him seize the moment of him to be like, oh my God, I know exactly what to do. And I'm going to jump as fast as I fucking can because I tried to do that with Gwen. And I knew if I was just a split second, like there, it's just, he guts her. And then like the fact that he just has her, dude. And then she looks at him and he just fucking breaks down sobbing. And guys, like I said, I just cried like a baby, and I've cried uncontrollably a few times watching that scene. From people like recording it in the theater or whatever. It's probably my favorite moment in the whole movie where I'm so happy that he got that closure, and just the way that he's so happy that he saved her. And it's like such a nice moment. And this is a heavy movie, guys, for something I didn't talk about yet that I'm going to put in my worst scenes actually, or my issues, but you're feeling it, right? And it's like you just feel something bad is going to happen. You just know it's like Empire Strikes Back, dude. It's just like a bad feeling. And so for MJ to fall, and like, let me say, guys, Tom and Zendaya's chemistry, and I think they're dating in real life, so it makes sense. But I hated MJ in Spider-Man in Homecoming. I thought she was terrible. I really liked her in Far From Home. And then in this one, I thought their chemistry was amazing. I thought on screen they were incredible. It was so cute, dude. But every time they were like, I'll come back to you, or I love you, or I miss you, or whatever, or they're like, just the emotions, they were so good. The cast just, oh my God, guys, the cast it's like they all had career days. They all put on legendary performances. It's incredible. But when she drops, I'm like, you can't kill MJ, dude. I was like, the Gwen's death was hard enough. And I was like, this is such a movie where I'm like, there's so much going on, and I've already been hit in the gut so many times. I'm already drained from this movie, some ways in good, some ways in bad, just from seeing the three Spider-Men. And then for her to fall, I'm like, you better fucking catch her, Andrew. And then I was like, they wouldn't have Andrew fail twice, would they? But then I was like, I don't know, because then that would be so sad that, like, I was like, we knew he was going to redeem himself, right? Like, as soon as that trailer dropped, I was like, oh, dude, Andrew. And like they see like a hand reaching for her, and it's like, oh, dude, Tom's not going to get it. It's going to be Andrew that saves her. And so that was pretty obvious, but you don't know, dude. And so when it actually happens, you're like, God, it's just like the sense of joy and relief. It's just amazing. And then the final scene, guys, I want to touch on. I've probably been talking for a very long time here, but this is a kind of a big movie. So the whole thing, guys, is that Peter does the least selfish thing at the end, where, God, that amazing scene where the spell breaks out or whatever, and then like we see it literally ripping, and it's like straight out of Loki, dude, where it's purple, and Doctor Strange is like, I can't hold them back anymore, like they're coming through to see you. And this is where I was like, oh, dude, we're gonna see some crazy shit. And so like there's like entities kind of coming through, and it's like everyone who knows Peter Parker is coming through, and I'm like, dude, we already got all the biggest villains. I was like, who is coming through that vortex? I'm like, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, who else knows Peter? And I was like, Miles is the first thing I thought of. And I was like, oh my God. And Jamie Foxx has a comment here where I think he's talking to Andrew Garfield. He's like, you're so cool, man. Or he's talking to Tom, I think, where he's like, you're so cool, man. He's like, I just thought maybe you'd be black. And he's like, what? And he's like, you know what? I'm sure there's a black Spider-Man out there somewhere. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, dude, are we going to get a live action Miles here? MCU has to do that. You know, a live action Miles is coming. And I think it would be fucking amazing. But Peter says, hey, they're all coming here because they know me, right? And Doctor Strange is like, yep. So he's like, how about we do a new spell? And he's like, this time you make everyone forget Peter Parker. And he's like, what? That means everyone you know and love. And he's like, we love you. I think Doctor Strange has a moment where he's like, we love you and we would forget who you are. And Peter's like, yeah, that's what needs to happen. And it's such a nice moment because he says, I think Doctor Strange is like, I'll see you around, kid. And it's like, oh my God, dude, oh man, Benedict Cumberbatch is just the perfect Doctor Strange. And I love Doctor Strange, one of my favorite MCU movies, but I can't wait for next Multiverse of Madness next. But this is such a nice moment where it's like, man, and watching all these Spider-Man movies, guys, I gotta say, well, you know what? I'll save that. I'm gonna save that for the end. But so they do the spell, guys, and everyone forgets Peter. And there's a heartbreaking scene where Ned and MJ, he goes over them because he's like, say your goodbyes now. You're not gonna have much time. And guys, he goes down and talks to Peter and Tobey. It's great. There's a scene I'm going to talk about in dislikes there, guys, but you know, he's like, hey, I gotta go, but he's like, your guys are going to forget who I am. Like, the only way to fix this is that everyone forgets Peter Parker. And they're like, wow. And it's so sad. And he goes, talks to Ned and MJ, and they're both crying, and they're like, what? And Zendaya does this amazing job where she's like, she's crying, dude, and she's like, no, there must be another plan. She's like, we got to come up with something. And Peter's like, there's no other way. Like, he's like, I'm sorry, but you're going to forget me. And she's like, no, I don't want to do that. And it's like, oh my God, it's so sad, dude. But he says his goodbyes, and he's like, I'm going to find you. I'm going to make you convinced. Like, I'll find you guys. I'll make you remember me. And then MJ is like, but what if it doesn't work? She's like, what if I can't remember you? Right? She's like, I don't want to do that. And it's like, oh my God, dude. It's like, I'm almost tearing up just talking about it right now. But they do the spell, and then Peter goes to see them at the coffee shop at the end, and they just got their letters from MIT, and they got it accepted. And Peter's just so happy, and he's like, oh, can I get a coffee? And she's like, yeah, okay, sir. And she's like, what's the name? And he's like, Peter Parker. And it's like a cute little moment, and because MJ and Ned are super tight, and they're talking about, oh, I can't wait for MIT and stuff. And Peter sees that, and you know, he goes, she's like, is there anything else I can help you with today, sir? Because she goes, coffee for Peter Parker. And he takes them in, he just looks at them. And then you knew he was going to say no, right? But she's like, anything else I can help with? And there's a long pause, and Peter just takes a minute, and he goes, no, that's it. I'll see you around. And it's like, oh my God, dude, he knows this is the best thing that Peter Parker has ever done. He knows that it's a detriment to their lives, and he's holding them back because of him being Spider-Man and him being Peter Parker. And so he loves them so much that he would rather let them live their lives and see their full potential than to live that old life where he's their friend again. And it's like, now, could you have said that, like, he could still be Spider-Man and then just tell them, and not, like, again, this was like the issue I had with Tobey's Peter, like, hey, just tell MJ you're Spider-Man and then the rest is fine. Could he have just been Spider-Man and been like, hey, just so you know, you guys are really cool. We were friends. He could have been like, hey, we were friends before. There was a big spell. I am Spider-Man. Look, here's me in the mask. But the point is, guys, like, if you think too deep about this thing, it's not going to make sense. But man, he makes the selfless decision to, like, possibly never see them again. And I'm like, wow, dude, like, that feels very final. And because MJ says, like, you know, tell me you love me when you find me or whatever. And he's like, I will. And then he sees her and he's like, have a good day. And he just moves on. It's so sad. But Guys, those are some of my favorite scenes, but there's a lot more I'm sure I didn't get to, but I've been going for a bit here, guys. So, yeah, some of my favorite scenes of just this incredible movie. Okay, guys, now a couple of things I did not like, and there's some of them are small and some of them are a little bit bigger. I mentioned it, guys. Max Dillon's appearance change, hated it, dude. Why? This Max Dillon was way too cool. And they were like, hey, you were nerdy before. What happened? And he's like, I don't know. I just got pulled into this dimension. And I'm like, no, dude. Like if you change all the characters, then it wouldn't have worked as well as it did. That's why Green Goblin was so hyped. That's why Doc Ock was so hyped. That's why Lizard was cool. That's why Sandman was cool, because they were exactly the same as they were in that universe. You just took them out and put them in the MCU with the characters we love. And it's like, why did you change Max Dillon, dude? Like, you know, they must have like gotten feedback that people hated that design because they changed Electro's suit. And I was like, whatever. But don't change regular Max Dillon, dude. Give him the glasses. Give him the nerdy, awkward thing. Like, that was really charming of Jamie Foxx's character. And yeah, his character was kind of annoying, but like, now it's like, that's Max Dillon. That's the Max Dillon I know. So to bring him in here, but to him be really cool as Jamie Foxx, and he's like, I like this me. I'm like, oh, dude, I hated that portion. I really, that's like the one big mistake I think they made. Another thing, guys, this might be a me problem. Aunt May's death, I thought it was poorly done. Not poorly done, but she gets hit with a glider. I don't know if it was the way they shot it, but like she's standing there, and it's like, boop, she just like hits him. But then I was like, oh my God, they're going to kill Aunt May. But then she keeps going. She like gets up and then she's like talking to Peter, like everything's cool. And I was like, well, obviously like she's going to reveal her Peter's like holding her and say, are you okay? Or whatever. But then Peter's going to take his hand away and there's going to be a huge wound. And like eventually she like has to lay down again. And then Peter like finds the blood. And that's when I realized that she's going to die. But it was just weird. Just the way that she died. And then it was heartbreaking when Happy came up. But then there was like a random SWAT team there, and I was like, who are these guys? Like, I was like, what's going on here? They start shooting at Peter, which is really weird. And I was just like, I don't know. It was just strange. And obviously, like, it was trying to bring back the Goblin glider coming through, but I just thought it happened too quick, where I wish that they had done like Peter and MJ and Goblin, and then like Peter does like the spider sense and he gets out of the way of the glider, and then it's like same way that Norman died with the glider is how Aunt May dies, where like I wish she had gotten like speared to the wall or something, so you could literally be like, oh my God, it's the same as Spider-Man 1, but it's Aunt May. But it's just weird the way they like killed her, but then it was like, she's not dead. Oh, but she actually is dead. But like they carried it out too long, and I thought that was really strange. So I didn't really feel, I love Aunt May and their dynamic. I didn't really feel anything for that scene. Because I just, the way it was done, I was like, it just feels kind of weird. And I love the idea that like, this is what we get, like dark, vengeful Tom Holland after that. And we get the scene at the end, guys, where he's kicking Goblin's ass and he's like punching back and forth, and it's like heavy punches. I'm like, oh, he's going to fucking kill Goblin. And he says like, I think Goblin says like, you could have killed me before, whatever. Or he's like, he says like, oh, too scared to send me back home to die. And he's like, no, I just want to kill you myself. And I was like, oh shit, this is a fucking like angry Tom Holland. This is angry Peter, vengeful Peter. And there's God, says that scene is so amazing that they're sitting on top of the roof and it's raining, of course, because rain always makes sad scenes better. MJ is hugging him and Ned is hugging him, and it's right after he loses Aunt May, and he's sitting there and he's crying, and Toby and Andrew are there, and I think this is when Peter's like, I need to send you back home, like this is my fault, and you guys just need to get out of here, this isn't right. And then that's when they say like, I lost Ben and blah blah blah. That's just an amazing scene. One thing I do want to say here, guys, is that there's so much going on in this movie that I was kind of losing track of it in real time. I don't want it to go understated, guys, that this is Tom Holland on a acting level that we've never seen him do before. This is elite level acting. This is next level Tom Holland, where he was incredible. This was like, I wasn't super crazy about him. Tom is such a likable actor and such a nice dude that like I liked him in Homecoming and Far From Home. And obviously in Civil War, and he's fun, he's quippy, but I mentioned in Homecoming he felt like a kid, and it kind of took me out of it. This felt like a more mature Tom, or more mature Peter, really. But this was like, it's like he came into his own, and like now he can be Spider-Man. And obviously the way the movie sets up at the end there, guys, where he makes his homemade suit, which looks just amazing, dude. And he goes out there, and it's like he starts fresh as Peter Parker. And I knew there were more Spider-Man movies coming, but I feel like now I'm ready for like the mature Tom Holland version of Peter Parker, and it's great because he's like literally growing up with us. Where it's like I don't know how old Tom was when in Homecoming, but he was 15 or 16 in the movie, and so he acts like a kid, which is really great acting. And then like now he's much more mature. He's acting more like an adult, and like he knows what it takes. He knows he has to do the sacrifice, and it's just awesome to see Tom grow up and Peter grow up in this role. And it's like the way that the Tobey trilogy, the Raimi trilogy is so, it's like always going to be like the one probably closest to my heart because I grew up on those movies. But like I grew up watching Tobey, but Tobey obviously was older for the role. Tom is a high school kid or around the age, and he looks so young where it's like we're watching Tom grow up. And so it's like, I think they plan to make like another trilogy with Tom as Spider-Man, is probably this new Spider-Man. And that's amazing. And that's when they'll probably bring Miles in there. But like, I'm so just, I don't know. I'm out of words, guys. But that was really it for scenes I didn't like. The Aunt May and the Max Dillon. Everything else, guys, was just, oh, one more thing, guys, I wanted to bring up. At the end, when Tom's like about to kill Goblin, there's a scene where Toby's standing there, and then Toby Tom is about to go John Walker on his ass, dude, and I think he takes the glider and he's about to smash it over Goblin's head and just murder him because he killed Aunt May. Also, guys, I didn't mention the amazing scene where Strange is trying to hit the box to send them all back, and there's a Goblin bomb that's left in there, and everyone's like, oh shit, and it blows up, and it's amazing. Tom is about to go fucking ape shit, and Goblin just absolutely massacre him because he's vengeful, and I get it, and all the Spider-Men that have gone through know that. And then Peter stops him, and he goes to there, and he's like, no. And I was like, oh my God, what a moment. And then Goblin's on the ground, and he stabs Peter in the back, and everyone gasped, and I was like, no, you're not going to kill Toby. You're not going to make me watch Toby die after bringing him back. And so, but then Toby's like, oh, I'm fine. I've been stabbed before. But I was like, they like faked it. It was a fake out death. And I was just like, this is strange. I didn't like that. Like, don't give me a fake Toby death. Don't scare me like that. Okay. But yeah, those are just a few of my scenes I just didn't. Oh, and then Electro taking, Peter, I didn't mention this, guys. Peter cures Doc Ock. So Doc Ock is a good guy. He fixes the inhibitor. He takes the inhibitor off, makes his own inhibitor and puts it on. And it's so cool because it works. And he's like, Peter, he's like, my boy. There's an amazing scene, guys, where Doc Ock runs into Toby's Peter. And he's like, Peter, he's like, you've grown up, my boy. And I was like, oh my God, dude, I'm going to cry. Like, just amazing, guys. But I didn't like that they made Electro. He's like, oh, once it turns to all the way green, just take it off. That's when the electricity is going to be out of your body. Not all of it, but like, you'll be a normal person now. And then like Electro's like, I don't know, I kind of like this gift. And of course it gets all the way to the last green one. And then he takes it off. And I was like, all right, that was obvious. Like, but it's weird because they saw him fix Doc Ock, and Doc Ock was like, thank you so much. I can't believe it. So you think the other villains would be like, oh yeah, fix us. But then I don't know, it's weird. But Peter does end up curing all of them, which is great. But I think that's going to really fuck up the multiverse. But anyway, guys, those are a couple of my least favorite scenes. Okay, guys, I'm not going to spend too much time on the score. It's a 10 out of 10. It's 1,000 out of 10. It's a million out of 10. I cannot believe that this movie exists. I'm still processing everything. This is the first movie, guys, where I think we're getting some bad weather here today, so I'm not going to be going out. But this is the first movie where I saw this movie in full last night, and I was like, I could go back tomorrow night. Like, I want to go back already to the theater and watch it all again because there's just so many things. I want to not only be in another theater, seeing other people react for the first time, but just knowing kind of what's coming, and like I can look for the little things, and just I want to have those moments hit harder. And it's crazy because I immediately want to go watch it again, and I already know this is a movie I'm going to watch a million times over, and it's going to be a day one 4K buy for me, and I cannot wait to just see it. And just what an accomplishment, guys! This is a cinematic masterpiece, an absolute amazing piece of storytelling. This is, like people have said, the Spider-Man Endgame, where Endgame was like, hey, we know you love all the movies, we're going to give you all the fan service. This was that for Spider-Man. But the fact that they could bring in like Sony Studios, the fact that they could bring in like the other Spider-Man universes that had nothing to do with Marvel, or well, they were association with Marvel, but had nothing to do with the MCU that Iron Man started, and they can be like, that's all canon now. Just amazing, dude. And I mean, the dialogue, the amount of screen time that we got with Tobey and Andrew with Tom is just amazing, and to see Tom's story and how he deals with the loss of Aunt May and how he's like, I have nothing besides my friends and Aunt May, and so he loses Aunt May, and then when he has to make his friends everyone forget who he is, so he has literally nothing at the end of this movie besides being Spider-Man, and so that's kind of what Spider-Man is, and that's the safest Spider-Man, but it's just sad because he can never like have a love life or have close family. And even when Spider-Man's been Spider-Man, he's always had Aunt May. So I'm so interested to see where they go with this. But yeah, guys, it's absolutely a 10 out of 10. Okay, guys, when we started this Project Parker review, I mentioned, guys, that I don't think anything can top Spider-Verse. I went to bed last night, guys, and I said, man, that was incredible. That was awesome. But Spider-Verse is a perfect movie. Well, guys, like I said, I was ugly crying for most of the morning, guys. I feel like it all hit me at once, like it washed over me at once where, guys, I could not stop. I couldn't control my emotions. I was watching people react to Andrew for the first time, seeing other people, like grown adults, weep or hear them like weep and cheer, and just the amount of joy that this brought people is amazing. The fact that Marvel can make something like this where it's like so many different generations and people, like literally millions and millions of people are so happy after watching this movie, myself included, where it's like how many people cried over this weekend, guys, in theaters with strangers, with 150, 200 strangers around them? Like I did, and it's like the fact that this can bring us all together. It's just incredible, guys. This is number one. This is, it has a couple flaws I mentioned, guys, but for the most part, it's not a coincidence, guys, that the two Spider-Verse movies, the live action and the animated one, are the top two Spider-Man movies of all time, because it's just amazing. And Spider-Verse was great because not only is it just visually, and I think there's no wasted screen time, and very similar in this movie, I think, as well. And it's just fantastic. And I love that they have the Miles origin story. The one thing I would say I wish that we got in this one, I wish we would have put a cap on Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I wish he would have just walked away and said, okay, and he just kind of walks away and just goes to be a normal kid instead of being the homemade Spider-Man, even though that suit looks amazing. I wish that they would have put a cap on that and they would have introduced Miles Morales. And then the next Spider-Man trilogy would have been Miles Morales, because Miles Morales is hot right now. Everyone loves Miles. And it's like we got our share of Tom, and we got the kind of a wrap up. We wrapped up Tobey's stories, Andrew's story. And now this was a great conclusion to Tom's arc, even though it was sad. And then we can move on to Miles. And so the only reason I was thinking of putting Spider-Verse up there is because not only did they have all the different Spider-Men, they introduced Miles Morales and made an amazing origin story. With this one, guys, it's like they didn't have an origin story, but the fact that they got Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, guys, to actually come in here, have it make sense, the screen time they got, the interactions they got, how funny this movie was. It's a perfect Spider-Man movie, and it's almost a perfect movie, guys. Like I said, there's a couple nitpicks I have. I wish there was a little more weight to Aunt May's death, but Tom does feel it. Like Tom shows his emotions the rest of the movie with how much he feels the Aunt May death, even if I didn't think the actual death itself was particularly well done. But guys, this is number one on the list, and this is wrapping up Project Parker for now. We have Across the Spider-Verse next year, guys. And like I said, I don't know if Multiverse of Madness is going to tie into this because Doctor Strange is like heavily involved with Spider-Man now. And so we'll see kind of where that goes. There's a trailer for Multiverse of Madness as a second post-credit scene. It looks fucking bonkers. Spoilers, guys. They have What If's evil Doctor Strange in live action now. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, they're just doing it. You really can't not watch the Marvel stuff that they put out because they're just tying it into the big movies. And it's like, wow, you're going to get so much more out of it. So yeah, guys, this is number one. Guys, that's it for this review. It's a long one. I'm sorry, but I held back the tears for this one. That's not going to be the case probably off camera. And when I go and see this movie again, which I plan on seeing at least 2 or 3 times in theaters because it's that good. It's amazing. Go watch it. It's incredible. It's amazing. Go sad, cry like Tobey. Go be cool like Andrew, and then I'd just be cool like Tom. I don't know. I'm trailing off on this one, guys. But thank you guys so much for checking out Project Parker. We're taking a break till next year, guys, but we'll be back without a doubt for Across the Spider-Verse and maybe for Doctor Strange, depending on if Spider-Man's involved in that. Also, we got to see Wanda in the post-credits, which was awesome. That was really cool. But yeah, guys, appreciate you stopping by. Guys, we did it. We got all 3 Spider-Men. I mean, what a time to be alive. Thank you, guys. If you like the content, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing. And till next time, guys. Stay swinging.